I flew bush planes for 17 years, Cessna 185s mostly, tail draggers built for short gravel strips and crosswinds that'll flip anything else into the tundra. You learn to read terrain from the air, like other people read street signs. Every oxbow lake, every gravel bar, every game trail cutting through the alders, I knew them. The Tanana River Basin, west of Delta Junction, was my backyard. I could set down on a sandbar in fog and know exactly which bend I was on just by counting the cutbanks. That confidence nearly got me killed. This was July of 2019. Me and two buddies, Jake, who worked maintenance at the airfield, and his cousin Dean from Fairbanks. We'd been planning this trip for months. Float the Tanana for 4 days, fish the oxbows, maybe see some moose. Nothing ambitious. We put in at Shaw Creek and made camp the first night on a gravel island maybe 3 miles downstream. Wide spot in the braided channels, good sight lines, ring of alders on the upstream side to cut the wind. I remember Jake asking if we should move closer to the tree line. I said no. Open ground meant we'd see anything coming. I set up my tent facing east. Habit from years of early takeoffs, wanting that first light to wake me. Dean got the fire going while I walked the perimeter, checking for bear sign. Nothing. Some old wolf tracks in the dried mud near the water's edge, but they were days old, collapsed at the edges. The gravel was that blue-gray glacial till, the kind that crunches under your boots no matter how careful you step. Wind was coming from the northwest, steady, maybe 8 knots. I always note wind direction. It's not something you turn off after you stop flying. We ate freeze-dried chili, drank some bourbon Jake had packed in a plastic bottle, told the same damn stories we always told. Dean went to bed first, around 11. Sun was still up. You know how it is in July up here. That flat golden light that just hangs. Jake and I stayed by the fire another hour. That's when we heard it the first time. Sounded like a loon. That wailing call they do, the one that carries across water for miles. Except it was coming from downstream, maybe half a mile, and there wasn't a lake down there. Just the braided channels and some sloughs choked with sedge. Jake looked at me. I shrugged. Probably just echoing weird off the water, I said. He nodded, but he kept looking in that direction. We turned in around midnight. I lay there in my sleeping bag listening to the river, that constant white noise of current moving over gravel. It's a sound that usually puts me right to sleep, but I kept thinking about that call. Loons nest on lakes. They need open water to take off, a long runway because they're so damn heavy. They don't hang out in river deltas. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew it was maybe 2, 3 in the morning. Still that weird twilight, and the scream came again. Closer this time, a quarter mile, maybe less. Upstream now, on the far side of the alders. I lay there with my eyes open, listening. The wind hadn't changed, still northwest, but the sound had moved against the wind. Jake unzipped his tent. You hear that? Yeah, that's not a loon. No, I said. It's not. Dean's tent stayed quiet, heavy sleeper. We sat outside for maybe 20 minutes, but the sound didn't repeat. Just the river and the wind moving through the alders, that dry rustling like paper. Eventually, we went back to bed. I didn't sleep much after that. Morning came with clear skies and that clean smell the air has after dew burn off. I walked down to the water to fill our bottles, and that's when I saw the marks, drag marks, leading up from the water's edge into the alders. They weren't deep. Whatever made them wasn't heavy, but they were wide, maybe 2 feet across, and they had this weird pattern, not smooth, textured, like something with a rough hide or, I don't know. Jake came down and we both just stood there looking at them. Otter? He said. I crouched down. River otters are common on the Tanana. They'll haul out on gravel bars, leave drag marks with their tails. But these were too wide, and there were prints between the drag marks. 5 toes splayed out, only they were arranged wrong. Too lateral, almost like human feet, Jake said. Not quite. The proportions were off. Too wide at the ball, toes too long. But yeah, the basic shape. Dean came down, saw us staring, asked what we found. I told him probably an otter. No reason to spook him on day 2. We fished the oxbows that afternoon, grayling and a couple small pike. Weather held. Everything felt normal. We made dinner, got the fire going again as the light started that long fade toward midnight. I had my GPS unit out, marking the coordinates of the good fishing spots. The unit kept losing signal. Not unusual in the basin. You're down in a trench, lots of tree cover on the higher banks. But it was frustrating. I'd get a lock, then lose it. then get it back shifted 300 meters from where I knew we were. Jake noticed me frowning at it. Interference? Maybe. Aurora activity? Probably. But I'd flown in worse aurora storms and never had GPS act like this. The scream came earlier that night. Maybe 10:30, just as Dean was heading to his tent. Same sound. That loon-like wail, but with something underneath it. A rasp. Like a human trying to imitate a bird call, not quite getting the pitch right. East of camp this time. Maybe 200 meters. We all stood there in the fading light, listening. Winds from the northwest, I said. Same as last night. So? Dean said. So the sound's moving perpendicular to the wind. Jake stared at me. Animals don't do that. I know. We decided to stay up, keep the fire big. If something was circling camp, we wanted to see it. Around midnight, Jake went to get more wood from the pile we'd stacked near the alders. He came back fast, face pale in the firelight. Something's been in the wood pile. We went over together. The logs had been moved, not scattered, arranged. Pulled out one by one and set in a row, parallel to each other, about 8 inches apart. 12 logs, perfectly spaced. Dean laughed. Nervous sound. One of you guys messing with me? Jake and I looked at each other. Neither of us had touched the wood pile since we'd built it that morning. That's when the scream came again. Close, maybe 50 meters, in the alders directly upstream. And this time we heard something else underneath it. A wet, sliding sound, like something heavy moving through mud. Everyone in the tents, I said. Now, we killed the fire. Stupid maybe, but I didn't want anything seeing us, and crawled into our sleeping bags. I lay there with my knife in my hand, listening. The sliding sound moved around the perimeter of camp. Slow, deliberate. It would stop for maybe 30 seconds, then continue. Always staying in the alders, never coming out onto the gravel. Then I realized it was stopping whenever one of us moved inside our tents. The rustling of our sleeping bags, the sound of us shifting position, and the sliding would pause. It was listening to us. Morning. Jake's dog was gone. Moose, a 10-year-old lab husky mix Jake had brought along, good trail dog, slept outside his tent every night. Tent was zipped shut. No barking, no sounds of a struggle, just gone. We found the drag marks leading into the water. Same textured pattern, same weird prints, except this time there was blood in the gravel. Not much. A few drops, already dried to rust in the morning heat. We're leaving, Jake said. His voice was flat, but his hands were shaking. I started breaking down my tent. Dean started packing up the cooking gear, moving fast, not saying anything. We worked in silence. The river sounded different that morning, louder maybe, or no, that's not right. It was the absence of other sounds. No birds. The alders weren't rustling even though the wind was still blowing. We got everything into the raft by 9. Jake was in front, Dean in the middle, me in back working the oars. Current was running maybe 3 knots, pushing us downstream steady. I kept checking over my shoulder, scanning the banks. Stop it, Dean said. You're freaking me out. I didn't stop. Around noon, we passed another gravel bar. There was something on it. Gray, wet-looking, even in full sun. Maybe 6 feet long, but low to the ground. It was sliding. That's the only word I have for it. Sliding from the water's edge up into a pile of driftwood. Smooth motion, no visible legs. I pulled hard on the left oar, angling us toward the far side of the channel. Did you see that? Jake's voice was tight. No, I lied. Bullshit. What was that? I didn't answer. I just kept rowing. We made it to the takeout at Delta Junction by late afternoon. Loaded the raft onto Jake's truck, tied everything down, didn't talk much. Dean left that evening, said he had to get back to Fairbanks for work. Jake and I went to the Last Chance bar, bought a round for some fishermen at the corner table. Old guys. Been fishing the Tanana for 40 years. I asked, casual, like I was just making conversation, if they'd ever heard anything weird on the river. Strange animal calls, maybe. One of them, guy named Carl with a beard down to his chest, looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "You camp on a gravel bar 3 miles below Shaw Creek?" My stomach dropped. Yeah. Carl nodded slowly. The screaming thing. Drags dogs sometimes. Couple cats from cabins near the river. Fish and wildlife won't touch it. Been there longer than we have. He took a drink. Moves through the water like an eel, but it's got arms. Saw it once in '92, just after breakup. Gray, hairless. Face was... He paused. Wrong. That's the best word I got. Face was wrong. Jake asked what it was. Carl shrugged. Old-timers call it Ersinra. Yupik word, I think. Means the one who listens. Don't camp on the gravel bars during July. It hunts when the water's low and it can move between channels. He looked at me. You lose anything? My friend's dog. Carl nodded. You got off easy then. I don't fly over that stretch of river anymore. I reroute even when it adds 20 minutes. And I'll tell you something else. 2 weeks after we got back, I had dinner at Jake's place. He pulled out his GPS unit from the trip. He'd been tracking our route like I had. His tracks showed we'd camped in 3 different locations over the 4 days, but we'd never moved camp. The GPS had recorded us in 3 spots, quarter-mile apart, forming a perfect triangle around the gravel bar where Moose disappeared. I checked my unit. Same thing. 3 different camp locations, shifting each night, even though we never packed up until that last morning. The tracks only showed up during the hours when we heard the screaming. I don't know what that means. I don't want to know. But if you're floating the Tanana west of Delta Junction and you hear something that sounds like a loon in a place loons don't live, don't try to find it. And for God's sake, don't let it hear you move. My cousin Troy and I have been hunting the White Mountains since we were teenagers. That's, 23 years now? We know the migration routes, the ridge lines, the places where caribou funnel through the valleys when the weather turns. September's the best time. The bulls are moving, pre-rut, and if you position yourself right on those glacial gravel fans where the old riverbeds cut through, you can glass them for miles. This was September of 2021. We'd packed in maybe 8 miles from the Wickersham Creek trailhead, set up camp on a bench overlooking one of those dry channels. Wide open country, tundra grass gone gold, dwarf birch starting to turn red. Sky was that hard blue you only get in fall, cold enough at night to freeze the water in our bottles. Troy had drawn a tag. I was just along for the walk, really. Helping pack, glassing, keeping him company. We'd been out 2 days, seen plenty of sign but no animals. Fresh droppings, rub marks on the willows, tracks in the soft spots between the gravel. But no caribou. That should have told me something. 3rd morning, we were up before light, glassing from the ridge line. I had my Zeiss binos. Troy had his Swarovski spotter set up on a tripod. We worked the valley systematically, left to right, checking every draw and bench. Nothing, not even ptarmigan, which is unusual. You almost always see ptarmigan up there this time of year. They're avoiding something, Troy said. I lowered my binos. Like what? He shrugged, kept glassing. Wolves, maybe. Or a bear pushed them out of the pattern. Made sense. Except we hadn't seen wolf sign either. No scat, no tracks, nothing. Around midday, we dropped down into one of the gravel fans to cover more ground. These are old glacial outwash plains, just miles of rounded stone, everything from pebbles to rocks the size of your fist. Flat mostly. Good walking if your ankles can take it, but it's loud. Every step crunches. There's no sneaking across gravel like that. We'd been walking maybe 20 minutes when I noticed the tracks. Caribou, fresh, maybe a few hours old. You could see where the hooves had pressed into the occasional patches of sand between the stones. But here's the thing. Caribou tracks are distinctive. 2 toes, shaped like crescents, and they splay out when the animal's moving. These tracks had that basic shape, but they were deeper than they should have been, pressed down hard like the animal was carrying extra weight or moving slowly and deliberately. And there were other prints mixed in with them. I crouched down, studying them. Troy came over, looked where I was pointing. Human? He said. They were barefoot prints, long, narrow, 5 toes, but the proportions were off. Toes 2 even in length, no real arch to speak of. And they were walking alongside the caribou tracks, not following, alongside. Same direction, same spacing. Maybe someone's out here without boots, Troy offered, but even he didn't sound convinced. We followed the tracks for maybe a quarter mile. They stayed parallel the whole way. Caribou on the left, the barefoot prints on the right, maybe 3 feet apart. Then they both just stopped. Middle of the gravel fan, nowhere near cover, just ended. Troy checked his compass, frowned, and tapped it. Magnetite, he muttered. The White Mountains have deposits of it. It screws with compasses. He pulled out his GPS unit. It locked on after a few seconds, showed us right where we should be. We kept walking, decided to loop back toward camp before the light started to fade. The sun was dropping behind the mountains to the west, throwing long shadows across the gravel. That's when we heard it. Crunch, 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 footsteps on the gravel behind us. We stopped. The sound stopped. Troy looked at me. I looked back at him. We started walking again. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Same rhythm as our footsteps, same cadence. Like someone Something was matching us, step for step. "Hey!" Troy shouted. His voice echoed off the mountains, came back thin and distorted. No answer. Just the wind moving through the tundra grass, that dry whisper. We turned around. Nothing. The gravel fan stretched out behind us, empty. Visibility was maybe 2 miles in every direction. There was nowhere to hide. "Animal echo?" I said. "Sometimes sound bounces weirdly up here, especially in the valleys where the acoustics get strange." Troy didn't respond. He was staring at the ground behind us. There were new tracks in the gravel, not ours. These were those same barefoot prints we'd seen earlier. 3 of them, spaced evenly, heading toward us from maybe 30 feet back. They just appeared, starting from nowhere. "We need to move," I said. We walked faster, not quite running. You don't want to turn your ankle on gravel like that, but a hard, fast pace. The crunching behind us kept time. Every step we took, we heard it echo, but it wasn't an echo. It was too precise, too deliberate. Fog started rolling in. Shouldn't have happened. Sky had been clear all day, no weather moving in, but it came up from the low spots between the gravel, thick and white, smelling like cold stone. Within maybe 5 minutes, visibility dropped to 50 feet. "Troy," I said. He was 10 feet ahead of me. I could barely see him through the fog. "Stay close," he called back. I kept my eyes on his pack, that flash of orange from his safety vest. We were maybe 2 miles from camp. Straight shot if we didn't veer off course. I pulled out my GPS, checked the heading. The screen flickered, refreshed, showed us 300 meters east of where we'd just been standing. I looked up. Troy was gone. "Troy." The fog swallowed my voice. No echo this time, just deadness, like shouting into a pillow. I ran forward, boots sliding on the loose gravel. "Troy." Nothing. I stood there, breathing hard, listening. The wind had stopped. The fog pressed in, damp and cold. And then I heard it, that crunching. Slow now, deliberate, circling me. I pulled my knife. Stupid. What was I going to do with a 4-inch blade? But it was something. I turned in place, trying to track the sound. It moved around me counterclockwise, maybe 20 feet out, just beyond the fog wall. Then it stopped. The fog thinned for just a second, just long enough. I saw it, tall, maybe 7 feet, but it was hard to gauge because it was hunched, shoulders forward like it was leaning into a wind that wasn't there. Gray, not fur, skin, I think, or something like it. Smooth and wet-looking even though the air was dry. It was standing upright, but the legs were wrong. Too long in the shin, joints bent backward like a bird's, barefoot. And the feet, Jesus, the feet. They were coated in something, a membrane, almost translucent, with bits of gravel stuck to it, like it had grown a layer of stone over its skin. When it shifted its weight, I heard that crunch. Gravel grinding against gravel. It was looking at me, I think. The face was, I don't remember the face. I remember running, slipping, catching myself, running again. The GPS was screaming errors. The screen flashing between 3 different locations, none of them where I actually was. I just ran toward where I thought camp should be, and either I got lucky or it let me go, because after maybe 10 minutes, the fog started to lift, and I saw our tent on the ridgeline above me. Troy was there, sitting outside his tent, staring at his hands. "Where the hell were you?" I was shouting, I think. Couldn't help it. He looked up at me. His face was blank. "I don't know. I was behind you, and then I was here." I don't remember walking back. We packed up in 20 minutes. Didn't talk about it. Just broke camp, loaded our packs, and started hiking out. We made the trailhead by dark, drove back to Fairbanks in silence. Troy won't talk about it. Says he doesn't remember anything after the fog came in. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe that's better. But I started looking into it. Found some old forum posts, hunting groups, trappers talking around the edges of something they didn't want to name directly. One guy, username Carriou Creek 7, said he'd seen tracks like that near Beaver Creek in the 90s. Said the old-timers called it Tunayet, an Inuit word, I think. Means the people who were here before humans, before anything. Another post mentioned the Gwich'in name for it, Nakhweni, the one who walks with a herd. Said it follows the caribou during migration, that it can wear their scent, their sound, blend in until it's standing right next to you. Said it takes people sometimes, not often, maybe one every few years, just lifts them out of the world and sets them down somewhere else, miles away, with no memory of the journey. I found one more thing, a wildlife biologist report from 2003, studying caribou migration patterns in the White Mountains. She noted Anomalous predation events. Caribou found dead with no wounds, no blood, just lying in the gravel like they'd fallen asleep. Always in September, always on the gravel fans. The report ended with a note. Further investigation suspended due to equipment malfunctions and staff safety concerns. I tried to reach her. She'd moved to Wyoming, wouldn't return my emails. Last fall, September again, I was up on the Steese Highway just driving, and I pulled over at a scenic overlook. You could see down into the White Mountains from there, those gravel fans cutting through the valleys like gray rivers. I glassed the area with my binos. Just habit. Something was moving down there. Tall, gray, walking alongside a small group of caribou, matching their pace exactly. I got back in my truck and drove home. I haven't been back to the White Mountains since. Don't plan to. And if you're up there in September and you hear footsteps matching yours on the gravel, don't stop. Don't look back. And for God's sake, don't let the fog catch you. I worked trail maintenance for the state from '95 to 2003. Spring meant clearing blowdowns, checking culverts, marking washouts before the tourist season started. Upper Tanana River corridor mostly. Alaska Range foothills. Rough country where the winter drops trees like matchsticks and the spring thaw turns half the trails into mud rivers. May of '97, me and two other guys, Rick and a seasonal hire named Connor, we were staged out of a work camp near Carlo Creek. Four-wheelers, chainsaws, hand tools. Standard 10-day rotation. Cut trails, stack brush, mark hazards. We'd done it a dozen times. The moraine fields up there are strange country. Glacial till from when the ice sheets pulled back. Just acres of loose rock and stunted spruce growing wherever they can get a foothold. Blow-down pockets everywhere. Places where a windstorm knocked down 50 trees at once, and they're just lying there in a tangle. Bark peeling off, wood going gray. You don't walk through that stuff. You go around. We set up camp on a bench above the river. Good drainage, flat spot for the tents. Rick had the cooking gear. Connor was in charge of fuel and tools. I handled the ATV maintenance. We worked hard during the day, ate freeze-dried dinners, slept heavy. Third night, I got up to take a leak around 2 in the morning. Moon was almost full. Good visibility. I walked maybe 30 feet from the tents, and that's when I saw it. A pile of bones. Moose, mostly. Rib sections, leg bones, and part of a skull with one antler still attached. Maybe a dozen pieces, stacked in a rough pyramid, about 3 feet high. Balanced on top was a smaller bone. Looked like a femur from a fox or lynx. Something like that. I stood there looking at it, trying to work out what I was seeing. Scavengers don't stack bones. Bears scatter them. Wolves drag them away. This was arranged. I figured maybe a raven had been messing around. They'll move stuff sometimes, play with objects. Or maybe it was frost heave. Rocks and bones can get pushed up through the soil when the ground freezes and thaws. But this was May. Ground had been thawed for 2 weeks. I went back to my tent. Didn't mention it. Just one of those weird things you see in the backcountry. Next morning, the pile was gone. Not scattered. Gone. No bones on the ground, no drag marks, nothing. Just the compressed moss where it had been sitting. Rick noticed me staring at the spot. Lose something? No, I said. Thought I saw a bone pile here last night. He laughed. You drinking the white gas again? Connor didn't laugh. He was looking at the tree line maybe 50 yards out, where the blowdown started. Something's been moving our tools, he said quietly. Rick and I looked at him. What are you talking about? Rick said. Connor pointed at the tool cache we'd set up under a tarp. I laid out 3 Pulaskis yesterday, blades all facing the same direction. This morning they're reversed. Handles where the blades were. Wind, Rick said. Wind doesn't reverse tools, Connor said, but he didn't push it. We worked the trails that day, cutting blowdowns, hauling slash, standard stuff. Got back to camp around 6, ate dinner, sat around the fire. Connor kept glancing at the tree line. I watched him watching it. Around midnight, I heard the sound. Click, click, click. Hollow wooden sound, like bones knocking together. I unzipped my tent, looked out. Nothing. Just the moonlight on the moraine field and the dark line of the blowdown forest beyond. The clicking stopped. I lay back down, but I didn't sleep much. Morning, another bone pile. This one was closer, maybe 15 feet from the tents. Bigger than the first. Caribou bones this time, I think, mixed with what looked like a bear skull. No lower jaw, just the cranium with empty eye sockets staring at our camp. And balanced on top, perfectly level. was one of our Pulaskis, the one with my name etched into the handle. Rick saw it when he came out of his tent. He just stood there, mug of coffee in his hand, staring. "Okay," he said slowly. "That's not funny." Connor came out, looked at the pile, looked at me. "You do this?" "No." "Someone's messing with us," Rick said, but his voice had changed, less certain. We took the pile apart. I grabbed my Pulaski, checked it over. No damage, no dirt on it. It had been cleaned. The blade was shinier than when I'd left it under the tarp. "We're leaving," Connor said. "We've got 6 more days," Rick said. "I don't care. We're leaving." Rick looked at me. I looked at the tree line. Something moved in there. Just a shadow, a shift in the light between the fallen trees. But it was big, taller than the blowdowns. "Let's pack up," I said. We started breaking camp. It was maybe 9 in the morning. Plenty of daylight left. But there was this feeling pressing down on all of us, like being watched by something patient, something that had all the time in the world. Connor went to get the ATVs started. He'd parked them maybe 40 yards out on flat ground near the trail. Rick and I were rolling up tents when we heard Connor shout, "Rick, get over here." We ran. Connor was standing next to his ATV, pointing at the ground. Another pile, right between the ATVs. This one was different. The bones were smaller. Rodent skulls, bird skeletons, something that might have been a marten, all arranged in a spiral pattern, tightest at the center, spreading out maybe 6 feet in diameter. And in the very center, standing upright, was a stick. No, not a stick, a finger bone, human-sized, maybe human, planted straight down into the moss like a tent stake. None of us said anything. We just stared at it. Then the headlight on Rick's ATV flickered. Once, twice, then steady. Except the key wasn't in the ignition. The ATV was off. "Start the machines," I said. Now. Connor's ATV wouldn't turn over. He tried 3 times, flooded it, tried again, nothing. Mine started on the second kick. Rick's fired up after a few seconds of grinding. "Connor, get on with me," I said. He didn't argue. He climbed on behind me, and we started down the trail. Rick followed. I looked back once, just once, at the camp. There was something standing at the edge of the blowdown, tall, maybe 8 feet. Hard to tell because it was hunched, or maybe its proportions were just wrong. The color of wet soil, long limbs, too many joints in the arms. It was holding something, another bone, I think, and it was placing it carefully on top of a new pile that hadn't been there 30 seconds ago. It didn't move like an animal. It moved like a person performing a task, methodical, focused. I gunned the throttle and didn't look back again. We made it to the highway by early afternoon. Reported the abandoned ATV to the supervisor, said we had mechanical trouble and had to pull out early. Didn't mention the bones, didn't mention what I'd seen. Connor quit 2 weeks later, said he was moving back to Anchorage. Rick stayed on, but he never took another rotation in the Tanana corridor. Neither did I. I asked around that summer, careful like, talking to some of the old-timers who'd worked those trails for decades. One guy, must have been 70, looked at me for a long time when I mentioned the bone stacks. "You see the builder?" he asked. I didn't answer. Athabascan folk up near Healy, they got a word for it. Nautzaga means one who arranges the dead, lives in the blowdowns where nothing else goes. Marks territory with what it finds. He sipped his coffee. "You're supposed to leave when you see the first stack. That's the warning. Second stack means you're trespassing. Third stack," he didn't finish. "What's the third stack mean?" I asked. He looked at me. "You didn't stay for a third stack, did you?" "No." "Then don't worry about it." I transferred to road maintenance the next year. Pavement, culverts, nothing more than a mile from the highway. I don't do backcountry anymore. Don't want to. And if you're ever working trails in the Alaska Range and you find bones stacked where they shouldn't be, don't take them apart. Don't investigate. Just leave. Because the second pile means you've been noticed, and you don't want to find out what the third pile means.